Welcome to our weekly Bible Reader Companion series. This week our reading is taken from Matthew chapters 3 through chapter 12, with our memory verse being taken from Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. From the New King James, the memory verse reads, "Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." Today we're going to consider passages found in Matthew chapter 10, verses 29 through 33. We're going to pick up where we left off yesterday as we considered verses 24 through 28. Jesus is providing encouragement to his disciples, his chosen apostles, as he stresses that serving God requires courage on the part of the disciples. Warned about the challenges to their faith that was going to come, they needed to be strengthened and encouraged so that they would not be crippled with fear. Four reasons are given as it pertains to discipleship and having courage. The first one that was mentioned was that the time would come when they would be vindicated and wickedness would be exposed. The second reason given there was concerning the limitations of the enemy of the cross of Christ. Their power ultimately does not reach beyond this life, but yet God's does. Now let's pick up the reading in Matthew chapter 10, beginning at verse 29. "Are not two sparrows sold for a cent, and yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father? But the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So do not fear, you are more valuable than many sparrows. Therefore everyone who confesses me before men, I will also confess him before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven." The third reason given for courage is God's concern. The Lord of body and soul is a loving, omniscient Father whose concern extends to every part of his creation, including the things that are insignificant. A cent or a copper coin, as referred here, is a small denomination Roman coin, and its value isn't worth much at all. That you could buy two sparrows with just one shows how cheap sparrows were. They were the cheapest birds in the market and were the poultry of the poor of that day. God's omniscience is further understood by his knowledge of the trivial, such as the numbers of hairs on our head. If God is aware of the death of nearly worthless birds, and he is also so acquainted with us that he knows how many hairs we have, the logic follows that we will receive individual and loving care from him. What a blessing of comfort and encouragement that should give each of us as disciples. A fourth reason that's given for courage is that Jesus will confess before God those who confess him before men. This word confess, if you look at the definition of that word, it carries the meaning of to say yes or to agree with, to stand publicly with. The word confess conveys the thought of confessing allegiance to Christ as one's master and Lord, and on the other hand, of acknowledgement on his part of the faithful one as being his worshiper and servant, his loyal follower, according to Vine's Expository Dictionary. A disciple's fundamental confession is that Jesus is Lord, as Paul writes to the Romans in Romans chapter 10, verses 9 and 10, and with all that implies. In the immediate context here, he's talking about before judges and courts, this idea of confessing Christ, but our entire life should confess Christ both by our words, our actions, our example, by everything that we do. When a person who says before men in word and deed, he, that is Christ, is mine, of him Christ will say before the Father, he is mine. Everything Christ says here is meant to assure and encourage us not to value this life too highly. Let us live as disciples of Christ, influencing the world so that the Father will be truly glorified. Let's remember our memory verse here from Matthew chapter 5 and verse 16. "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." Thank you, and join us again tomorrow as we continue to meditate on God's Word together.
Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook for more content like this.